Hey everyone, here I have two 4K webcams. On the left hand side here I have the OBSBOT Meet 4K, and on the right hand side I have the OBSBOT Tiny 2. Both of these webcams are capable of recording at 4K at 30 frames per second, but they can also record up to 60 frames per second at 1080p. So that's really useful if you're doing game recording or game streaming. So in this video, what I'd like to do is give you a very quick look at the webcams themselves, but then I'd like to focus on the software, and that is the primary focus of this video, to show you the software behind these webcams. And that software is called OBSBOT Center, and you can use it to adjust settings, update the firmware, change the image and colors and different things. So very useful, and if you understand that software, you can get more out of these webcams. Now, it is worth noting before I go on that both of these webcams can be used without that software. These webcams are UVC, USB video class, which means that they're essentially plug and play for pretty much every platform out there. They will work with Android, with Unix, with Linux, with Mac, Windows. I believe they even work with PlayStation 3s. Kind of weird, but UVC is widely supported. So you can use these with a host of different platforms, but the software OBSBOT Center is only available for Mac and Windows. Unfortunately, there's no official software for Linux there, and it doesn't look like it's in the pipeline. But if you're a Mac or Windows user, you can use the software to change the settings, the colors. You can update the firmware. For every other platform out there, you can download a firmware file and just simply use that bin file to update or upgrade the firmware manually. And little Tiny 2 is switching on there. So if I jump over to here, you'll see the Meet 4K, and if I turn it on, you can see some of the options. Now, I want to quickly jump back and show you this webcam. When you turn this on, you'll see the light there. And I'm going to take it off the magnetic mount that comes with it. So this is the OBSBOT Meet 4K, and you can see it comes with a nice little lens cap. We've got the light there, microphone, tripod thread. It's magnetic at the bottom, obviously, with this because of the casing. We've got a Type-C connection here, and we have an action camera style button on the top because this really does look like an action camera. So that button isn't just for power. If you push that button once, it enables auto framing. If you push it twice, it enables the virtual background. And if you hold it in, it will turn it off. So it puts into sleep mode. And then you push it again for 3 seconds, it will turn back on. So that button's quite useful. You know, it's a very quick way of just turning the webcam on and off, or enabling a virtual background. If you're going into a Teams call or something, you can just double click the button at the top quickly, and then you'll hide your background and, you know, put on something else. So that's really useful. Now the Tiny 2 here, which also has a magnetic mount, I'll take that off for a second. The Tiny 2 does not have any buttons at all. You can see it's turned on. And if I jump over to the software here, I'll turn off the Meet 4K, switch the Tiny 2, and I'm going to turn it off and turn it on. You can see it's very easy to do that. And with the gimbal, you know, you can move this around, upside down, left and right. And if I jump back to the overhead camera, you'll see what's actually going on here. So if I turn this off, it just kind of resets. If I turn it back on, now it's going back to the same position it was in there, but what would normally happen is it would reset back to the normal position. So if I turn it off now and I put it back on, there you go, it switches on. And then from there you can tilt, you can zoom, and you can really put this camera into any position. Really, it's really great what you can do with this. Now I'll turn it off for a second. I just want to show you at the bottom, we've got the tripod thread. We have a Type-C connection here, but we've got the microphones here. There's not much to this, you know, it just kind of moves around and does its own thing. Now, just for a quick reference, you know, you're talking around 150 to 200 bucks for the Meet 4K. You're talking about 300 to 350 for the OBSBOT Tiny 2. So this is the more expensive one. And when you see the video previews, you can see that the video image on the OBSBOT Tiny 2 is better. You do notice a difference, and you will see that when I do the video previews. So what I'm going to do now, the cameras are connected up, but what I want to do now is put these on top of my monitor right next to this webcam here, or this camera here. That's my Sony a6500. I'm going to put both of the cameras up like that, put them up there, and then we can look at the software. The software has a lot of similar features for both of the cameras, but because the Tiny 2 obviously has that gimbal mechanism, there's a few extra options in there. So let's put it on top of the monitor. Let's put these on top of the monitor, and we'll take a closer look at OBSBOT Center. So this is the OBSBOT Center control panel. And what I'd like to show you first is the software settings area, which you can get to by clicking on the cog at the top right-hand side of the panel here. So the software version here is 2.0837, but just before I started recording this, I actually upgraded that from a previous version. Very simple. I just had to click the update button, and it took a few seconds and it was updated. Very, very straightforward. Now, two things to note here. The first one being that this is updating the software version of OBSBOT Center. If you want to update the firmware of each of those webcams, you select the webcam in question, you go to More, and you go down and you'll see an option for the firmware version. So that is where you would upgrade the firmware of the webcam. What I did there was update the software of OBSBOT Center. Now, the other thing to note is that when I did do that update there, it did reset the size of the panel. It did reset the size of the video preview. So there may be a little bit off position to what they were before, but that is why, just because I've just reset the software and it reset the position of the control panel and the video preview. Okay, back to software settings. At the top here, we've got product tutorial, language, English, Chinese, German, Spanish, French, etc. And underneath, we've got media settings. So the video recording bitrate can be set at low or high. There's no medium there. Video recording format, MP4, MOV, AVI, all your kind of common file recording formats there. And then you've got the media file location. Now, each of these media settings refer to the fact that when you click the preview here, like this, you can take photographs and you can click record and you can start recording. And you can see that there's microphone options down the bottom here. You can see the audio is jumping up and down because it's recording that I'm speaking, or it's noticing that I'm speaking. And down at the bottom here, we've got video format. So 4K is at 30 frames per second, but 540, 720, and 1080p are all at 30 or 60 frames per second. So you just have to select the format which you want, and that's just if you want a quick way to do some recordings with the OBSBOT Center software. Now, if we jump back here, you can see that there's some other options here, enabling global hotkeys, remote controller, that's a remote, an accessory that you can buy for each of the webcams. Assistive settings, we've got other settings here as well. Close the software, tells you what it does. And then you can start the software automatically when you launch your Mac or your Windows computer. Next tab here, the next section, we've got global hotkeys. There's a lot of different hotkeys here that you can see here: turn on and off, switch devices. If you've got multiple webcams, you can switch between them. You can zoom in and out. You can reset the gimbal, move the gimbal up and down, change the viewing angle. Lots of different options here. This is not something that I would really use normally, but if you find yourself using the same webcam every day and you're using it in Zoom calls or Teams calls, or you're doing a YouTube recording or Twitch, you might find yourself doing the same thing a lot, zooming in, zooming out. And in that case, it's worth enabling global hotkeys, and it's worth remembering what those commands are, because it just makes it so much quicker to adjust the image and adjust the position of the image as well. So the last option here is OSC, which stands for Open Sound Control. Now, this is not something I know a lot about, but the Open Sound Protocol is apparently something that you can use to connect to synthesizers, something that musicians use. It's not something I'm going to be using myself, but it is something that both of these webcams support. So it's cool that it's got that feature. If you're a musician, this is maybe something that you would use. Not something I think most general users would, but it's pretty cool that that feature is there. So that is the software settings area. Let's take a closer look at OBSBOT Center, and let's start off with the Meet 4K. Now, you will see most of the same settings for all of the OBSBOT cameras, but for each of the webcams that OBSBOT sell, they have different features, and that's why there's different options available in the Tiny 2 that you won't see available for the Meet 4K, for example. I want to start off by just showing you at the top. This is where you select the camera, and you can see that we've got a number 1 here, but if we select the Tiny 2, it will say 2. And that's just a very quick and easy way of seeing which camera that you're modifying, which one that you're changing the settings for. So we've got a host of different options here. The main ones you'll be using are the video preview and sleep and resume, but we've also got the remote controller, global hotkeys, a virtual camera, and OSC. So these are different options that you can enable with these. Just with a click of a button, you can turn on global hotkeys like that, or you can disable them. There's another option down here as well. You'll see that when the device is sleeping, there's an option for the microphone status during sleep, and by default it is turned off. The microphone is turned off. Now, I was a little bit puzzled by this, like, why would you need the microphone on? But what that effectively means is that if you enable that and the webcam's turned off, you can still use the microphone in the webcam. So if you're in a Teams call and you don't want your camera to be on, but you still want to use the microphone built into the webcam, you would enable that to ensure that the webcam is still active. So cool little setting, not something I thought I'd be using, but I can see many situations where that could be very useful. So let's turn it on, and let's turn on the video preview, like so. Yay! So I've got the video preview here, and the reason being, I don't want, obviously you've got me in stereo here, but the reason I've got both images here is so that you can see exactly what the webcam sees. And the Meet 4K doesn't spin around like the Tiny 2. You position it in the position that you want, and if you want to change it, you will have to start moving the webcam around like that. So the first thing to notice is I'm not recording audio from the Meet 4K. I do an audio preview, an audio test in my main review, but just now I'm recording through this microphone, and you can see that it's in the shot. But what I can do is enable auto framing. And what I'm going to do, see, you can see that it cuts off right away. But if you remember what I said earlier on, if I push that button once on top, there we go. It is now enabled, and it's positioned me in the shot. So that's quite good, because the Meet 4K has quite a wide angle. It's quite a wide angle camera. Like I said, it looks like an action camera, and it's got a wide field of view as well. So it's quite good that you've got this option that you can auto frame and cut a lot of it out. You've got close-up mode here, group mode as well. A lot of different options here, depending on if, just yourself or there's a few of you. Change the upper body, not sure. Yeah, it kind of seems similar to close-up there. I'm going to push the button now. Auto framing is off. Double click. Virtual background. Oh, I've got, that must have been a single click. Let's try it again. Double click. Here we go, virtual background. Okay, we have a virtual background now. And you can obviously upload any image you want in the background. This is very crude, obviously. This is not the best virtual background out there. You can see that it's kind of cutting my ears off. It's all kind of blocky. But this serves a purpose. This is for jumping into a call quickly, and you don't want people to see where you are. You don't want them to see your room, your bed behind you, anything messy. This is what you could use. If you prefer, you can blur, and you can adjust the blur level like that. Or if you want, you can do green screen, which is something you might find useful if you're doing recording for YouTube or something like that. You could record yourself like that. You can change it to blue screen as well. So a lot of different options there. I'm going to turn it off again. Double click. Come on. There we go. It registered that time. So you can enable that or disable that using the button, or you can do it through the software. Underneath, we've got the view and gimbal, and then we've got the different settings here. And we saw that with the auto framing, that was changing the zoom level. And you can see here, wide, medium, narrow. And I just love how quick it changes, between all of those. It's obviously just cropping the image, but it's really good how quickly it switches between that. If you prefer, you can, yeah, not the nicest view, and you can reset it. Now, it is showing view and gimbal here, like that. But if you're at a wide angle, that's not going to do anything. But if you're on a medium, kind of angle and it's cropped down, you do still have some option as to where the image is being cropped, like that. You can see that it's, I'm just moving around the cropped image effectively, like that. Okay, the next option here we have is image, and there's lots of different options here. You can see the autofocus is enabled. You can set manual focus if you wish. Not ideal there. I found autofocus to be quite good. It's focused on my face there, but it works a little bit differently in the Meet 4K than it does with the Tiny 2. The Tiny 2 is a little bit better as far as finding products, but you can see it's kind of changing where it's focusing there if I hold my phone up, like that. But it kind of mainly focuses on a wide angle. It does act more like an action camera in that regard. Got auto exposure here. You can change the shutter speed, the ISO, anti-flicker there as well. We've got white balance settings. If you want to change the temperature, you can. And that's something you might find yourself doing. It's one of those things, I found the Tiny 2 look better out of the box than the Meet 4K did. Not terrible, but again, this is something that's kind of up to your recording environment. If you're in natural light, you probably don't have to change anything. If you're using lighting like I am, sometimes the lighting is great in one position, like over there, but not for where your webcam is. So that's something you might want to change manually. At the bottom there, we've got the image, we've got contrast, saturation, sharpness, hue. You can really go to town here with all the different settings and adjust what the image looks like. Oh, still changing it there because it was changing so many things. Come on, there we go. So I can just manually put in the number as well. I'm going to put in 50, put it back to normal. I think my number locks off. Yeah, it was. That's what was causing the problems. Okay, so we've got the image back there, and it's one of those things, you have fine control here. You might want to take a note of your settings for future use for different situations, but it's good that you can adjust that image. Now, if you wish, you can turn things off. You can adjust it in other software, such as OBS. But for the most part, it's probably easier to just leave things on auto unless something just doesn't look right. Up here, we have beauty, background blur. We've got blur effect again, like that. There's advanced settings for that as well. You can turn it off. So advanced blur seems to crash OBSBOT Center. Hopefully they'll fix that in a future version. For now, let's move on and look at retouching. So this is something that helps you manipulate your face, your image, your shape. It's not really marketed to me, but there's a lot of people out there that do like to do that kind of thing, and it's common in YouTube, it's common in Instagram, etc. And you can see that there's a few different presets at the top. You can see there, native, classic, that's really weird, man. And what those are doing is just changing the presets underneath, like that. It's hiding my wrinkles, it's trying to hide my blemishes and red marks and different things like that. And you can see there's a lot of different options here, tone, smoothing things out. I just look like a cartoon now. You can see, I mean, this gets really freaky if you don't get the settings right. Cheekbones, nose, this is, yeah, it just looks ridiculous now. This is just something I never use. I'd rather people just saw me for who I am, but you can get these settings in here. And it's one of those things, I mean, I suspect if you use this, oh geez. Yeah, there's a lot of different options there, but thankfully we can reset it. So that's not kind of marketed to me. I'm happy just showing all my defects, but there's a lot of people out there that do want to use that. And maybe if your lighting isn't right, maybe this is something you can just touch up a little bit just to make you look a little bit better. So the options are there if you want them. I think I'd be more inclined to use things like this because the filters here, if you look at them, you can see this one, I already had it pre-applied. The filters here help you adjust the colors and things like that. You can see that it adjusts the lighting. And I have found that sometimes it is for, for webcams and different things. When I'm using multiple cameras like I do, I've got a camera here, I've got a camera there, I've got the overhead camera up here as well. It's hard to get lighting that suits all of those camera positions. And that's where sometimes a filter like this can be useful because you can leave the lights the way they are and just kind of adjust things like that. And you don't have to go in and change everything, you know, as far as all the colors, etc. It's just a very quick preset. You can go in and just change it, and you can adjust the level like that. I think the nature one here seems to look really good, or the fresh one looks really good. And then you can change, you know, there's different settings here. Yeah, really good. I quite like those filters. Not a fan of, you know, the beauty filters, but the filters there that simply adjust the colors, I think are pretty good. Okay, let's look at more. So we've got some options here. Auto sleep after 2 minutes if you wish, 10 minutes, 30 seconds. We've got the virtual background if you wish, button configuration, audio, mirror image, firmware version, manual upgrade, reset factory settings. There's a log there as well. Now, one option here you'll see is noise reduction. Now, by default, the noise reduction, I believe, was enabled, and it does seem to improve the audio. It does seem to like remove the background noise a little bit. And in my opinion, it did make it sound better. You'll see this in my main review that the sound is a lot better with noise reduction. Now, with the Meet 4K, you don't get a lot of options here. Noise reduction is on or it's off. There's no fine control there. There's no EQ. There's no like levels you can adjust. You're either enabling it or you're disabling it. And by default, if I remember right, it was enabled. So that's the option there. Okay, so that is OBSBOT Center. That's how you can use it to, you know, change the colors and settings of the webcam of the Meet 4K. What I'd like to do now is just show you what those settings are like with the Tiny 2. So the preview box here is still showing the Meet 4K, and so far it's defaulted to 1080p at 30 frames per second, but I can change it to 4K, like so. But what I want to do now is show you the difference between this and the Tiny 2. So let's change to the Tiny 2 and look at that. I think the image quality in the Meet 4K is really good, but the Tiny 2 is clearly a level above. It's more advanced, and in my opinion, it stands shoulder to shoulder with many dedicated cameras that you would connect to your computer using a capture card. So really impressive image quality out of the box there. And everything else here in OBSBOT Center, you know, as far as the main navigation, it's all the same. You've got, you know, your software settings. You've got a link to the app news. You've got your preview, power, remote controller, global hotkeys, virtual camera, OSC. All of these options are still the same, but you can see that you've got all these additional tracking options, and that's because this camera can do something that the Meet 4K cannot. It can move around, it can spin around, and it can do a lot of kind of weird and wonderful things, you know, just moving it around like that. You can pan, tilt, and zoom, and it can go all the way around to it actually sees the other webcam. I think you can maybe see it there. Yeah, so there's the Meet 4K there. And I can click reset and it'll go back into position. Now, for some of you, that might seem like a gimmick, but for a content creator, that is very, very useful. My Sony a6500 here, very good image quality, but it's fixed. I can't do much with that. Whereas with this camera, I can do a lot. Now, this camera does not have a button. There's no click, you know, one click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks at the top, anything. There's nothing like that at the top to do anything with it. You have to control it all here, but it does have a few tricks up its sleeve. So here you can see on the website that you've got hand gestures. Now, I'm very bad at these hand gestures, but I'm going to attempt it for you guys just to show you that it works. There you go. And sometimes it seems to work, sometimes it doesn't. There are other options there. You'll see in the website, there's like zooming in and out, the select, cancel target, 4 times zoom. So there's lots of different things like that that you can do with this. You know, you just hold it up and it'll zoom in and out and different things like that. You know, that's maybe something that you'd want to use, maybe not. But the other thing that you can do, I think it's this one. There are some audio commands as well. So I can say sleep tiny, sleep tiny. There we go. It's turned off. It actually worked this time. Hi tiny, hi tiny, and it switches back on. And there's other things you can do there as well. Zoom in closer. Zoom in closer. It's not working. Track me. Oh, that's working. So yes, it does seem to have some issue with the voice commands with the Scottish accent. Yeah, there's a lot of different commands there. There's a dozen or so commands that you can do for getting to different camera positions, for zoom in, zoom out, unlock me, will stop tracking, things like that. And you can see what it's done up here is just set the tracking when I've done that. So there's hand gestures, there's voice gestures, and that's instead of pushing the physical button that the Meet 4K has. So a lot of cool options there. You can see there's motion tracking here, which should hopefully move things about. We've got normal tracking, which does seem to do quite a good job of following me about. That's pretty cool, actually. It works quite well. We've got upper body, which will hopefully, yeah, close up. Will seem to be quite similar, but if I move about, you can see that it is still tracking me. I'll do standard, get headless, lower body. I don't know why we would do this, but it does seem to be working. Now then we've got the AI mode. I'm going to reset that because it's in a very funny position. Then we've got AI mode. So we've got desk mode. And again, some people might think this is gimmicky, but this is actually quite useful. You can zoom all the way down to do like a product review, to do a video review, any kind of YouTube, any kind of Twitch, any kind of content creation. You can show something that's on your desk. Very, very useful. And it should reset back now. There's also a whiteboard mode. If you're a teacher, you can zoom onto the whiteboard, and it seems to be zooming onto my monitor here, so it is trying to find a board. That's quite cool that it actually detected that screen there in the background. You've also got hand, right hand, so that's actually left hand controls here, and you've got right hand as well. So different setting there as well, and you can see there's a set button there, so you can really go into and fine control all of those options there. I want to turn those off. Down at the bottom here, we've got wide, medium, and narrow, like that. And you can zoom all the way in 4 times. Not very flattering, but it is there. And of course, we do have the panning and tilting. So you can go all the way up. You can see my overhead camera. It's quite dusty, but it is there. And you can go all the way back down. Now, the cool thing is that, I'll reset this just now, when you do get it into the position that you want, you don't have to do it again because you can simply add it as a preset. So there's preset 1. And then if you change the settings, you just go back and update it. And if you wish, you can rename it and you can delete it. So you might have a preset for your business calls, your Teams calls, your Zoom calls, and then you might have one for content creation. However you want to use it, you can set up these different settings, a whiteboard setting, a desk mode setting, etc. So a lot of cool options there when it comes to tracking. And that's really where the Tiny 2 kind of stands out from the crowd and compared to your, in comparison, to your standard webcam. It's not just fixed in position. This can go all the way around, and you can put this into any position and point the camera pretty much anywhere. So really, really useful. I know I'm kind of stressing this point here because I think some people might look at a pan tilt zoom webcam as maybe gimmicky. It's not. It clearly is very useful. So let's just go through some of these settings again. I just want to show you autofocus. And you can see here, this is more like a kind of pro camera, the way that it focuses in like that. So dusty, back onto me. So that really is quick. It's not doing a lot of searching. It's finding me very, very quickly. That's pretty cool. I think that's really good the way that works. We've got auto exposure, etc. Again, shutter speed, ISO, white balance. We can change all of these settings. And then you've got all the image contrast features. We've got beauty. We've got the background blur. I'm not going to touch that this time. I don't want to crash the app. I'm not going to go near advanced. And then we've got native, classic, man, etc. All those settings are there. Got all the filters again if you want to change that. Some cool filters there. And then we've got more. Auto sleep is there again. You've got a sleep background. When it's sleeping, let's bring up a file to show a background when it's sleeping. So that might be useful if you're actually recording, for example. If you're on OBS, you're streaming to Twitch or YouTube, you could show an image when the webcam actually goes to sleep rather than just having a black screen. So here we've got extra options here. These are the gestures that I was talking about where you've got lock target, like that. We've got the zoom, dynamic zoom, and different things. It seems to work my experience with this is that it seems to work sometimes, other times it doesn't seem to be working well with me. That might be because I'm not doing it right. I don't know. I don't know if I'm maybe not doing it right there. I'm going to reset that image again. But you can disable those options, and you can change the zoom factor there as well. And you can see all the voice controls there that I'll be saying, like hi tiny, sleep tiny. Is it going to go off? Sleep tiny, like that. And you can see all those options in the background there, zoom in closely, etc. So going down, as I mentioned last time, with the Meet 4K, noise reduction, is on or off. But here we've got noise reduction weak. We've got off, weak, medium, and strong. So you've got greater control over how much reduction is going on there. And this is the thing about noise reduction in general, is that sometimes you need to increase the level of noise reduction to get rid of the fan noise, to remove background noise outside your house. But by doing that, you can warp the audio a little bit. So there's a kind of fine line between improving the audio and setting those settings too high and you make it worse. So it's good that you've got an extra level of control here. Automatic gain control, disable the microphone, radio distance, close, standard, far. You can mirror the image. We've got pan tilt settings as well. You can set the initial state. You can reverse it, indicator status. There's a green light that comes on when you switch it on, and the brightness level of that. Firmware version, export log, manual upgrade, reset, factory settings. For the most part, apart from the console and the kind of audio and gesture settings you've got in here in the more area, I would say that the console area with the additional tracking settings is where the Tiny 2 differs in OBSBOT Center. In OBSBOT Center with the Tiny 2, you do have all those additional tracking options. You've got greater control over where you point the camera. For me, this is very, very useful because it just means I can just move the camera down a little bit, like so, and you don't see this microphone here, which you guys know is there, but I've cut it out of the shot. So those tracking options are really good, especially if you're doing a product review and you want the camera to, follow you about. Really, really useful. And, I found OBSBOT Center very, very easy to use. I hope you've all enjoyed this look at OBSBOT Center, the software that's available for Mac and Windows that lets you control and adjust and update your Meet 4K and your Tiny 2 and a host of other OBSBOT webcams. This software is very easy to use. It's got so many tracking options, zooming options, presets, medium, narrow, wide. You can control the image, you can control focus, exposure, the color of the image. There's beauty filters, presets, there's configuration settings, there's audio settings there as well. So there's a lot of different options there. It's more than what you'd normally see in a webcam. So very impressed, very easy to use, lots of great features. And like I was saying, you don't always see that. There's a lot of webcam companies out there that rush out the webcam itself, and then the software is an afterthought. And the software sometimes is nothing more than a way to update the firmware, update the software, crop the image perhaps, but it doesn't have all the features and all the settings and all the different options that you saw with OBSBOT Center. And because of that, I think that the OBSBOT Center software actually takes both of these cameras up to another level, just from a control and a configuration point of view. So very impressed with OBSBOT Center in general. And it was disappointing to see the app crash because of the advanced blurring effect. But it's not something that concerns me at all, because the OBSBOT Center software is updated all the time. Even today, you saw there was a bug fix, so they released a new version. So I have no doubt that in a few weeks that bug will be addressed. It won't be there anymore, and they'll probably add some additional features to the software as well. So absolutely no concerns. I hope you've enjoyed this look and this insight into the Meet 4K and the Tiny 2. You should now have an idea as to what these webcams are about and what the software is about. But please check out my full review. In that video, I give you more of an overview and summary as to the capabilities of these cameras, the pricing, the audio. There's a video and audio test in the review as well. I just talk more about what these cameras are and what they can do. So please do check out the full review. And I do appreciate you watching this tutorial as well. So thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.